fight it, but a little bit nervous.
Anyone can do drag. That's what's so special.
I'm a little bit nervous.
Why are you nervous? The best way to get less nervous is just to ask us questions. Do you wear rings sometimes?
No, not really.
You're too young. Would you agree that makeup is for everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Where do you buy your drag clothes?
Do you have like a favorite drag performer?
Well, I haven't really seen too many.
Can I be your favorite drag performer since I'm the first one?
Yeah.
Feeling a little shy.
How old are you?
I'm 10.
How old do you think I am?
Why are you nervous?
Is this your first time seeing a drag queen?
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
I fight it, but a little bit nervous.
I'm going to leave that in the backdrop because some of you might not know what we're looking at. That was official CBC, Canada Broadcasting Corporation, state-funded media, grooming children. I'm not trying to be funny. I posted this a while back, and I'll share the link. And there's the full 6-minute video clip. Do you know what it's called when you put a child in an uncomfortable position and then expect them to fight that uncomfortable feeling of something that is fundamentally sexual in nature? It's called grooming. That was CBC grooming children in real time and broadcasting it to the world. Why do I bring that up? Because it's going to fit perfectly into today's discussion with Jana. I'm going to screw up her last name. Jana Lunden, who is, for whatever reason, I'm going to find out why she's in Ireland and she's been there for a while, raising awareness to what can only be described as the institutionalized grooming of children in Ireland. I'm gonna go back to that video because it's the most shocking video you've ever seen. I'll fight it, but I'm feeling a little nervous. Is this your first time? When an adult male dressed as a woman is asking a child if it's your first time, I mean, where the hell are the parents? I mean, that's the type of thing. I don't condone violence, and there's no but to that because you end up in jail despite thinking that you were righteous in doing it. That's the type of thing that gets people punched in the face. Oh, hey there, little girl. Is this your first time looking at a drag queen? Can I be your favorite drag queen? Holy crab apples. I'm not a violent man. There's no but to it. I wouldn't do it. I guess the but is I could envision someone just instantaneously snapping for no, despite their best intentions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to bring that video back up because it's absolutely atrocious, as you can obviously imagine why. But before we get into that, we are going to thank our two sponsors of today's show. Not ironic, I guess fitting sponsors of today's show. And I know, everybody, that there's some big news in terms of Dan Bongino being appointed to Deputy Director of the FBI. I'm going to make a video about that later this afternoon, so stay tuned for that. Possibly the most inspiring appointment ever. You got Kash Patel, who's now the head of the FBI, and Dan Bongino, the second most powerful person in the FBI. Holy crap, Apple State. We'll talk about that afterwards. But this is the risk of having scheduled interviews that don't clash with, but don't necessarily coincide with the other breaking news that everybody wants to talk about. We'll talk about it later. But the sponsors of today's show, people, are two sponsors that fight for free speech. I love it because, we're running this on CommieTube. We're going to. I don't care. I'm not gonna use code words to describe things. I'm not going to bring up all of the material that Jana has been discovering is being exposed to children in school. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's good enough to expose to children in schools in Ireland, but too toxic for the algorithm on YouTube. That might tell you something. But we got two sponsors who support free speech. One is a Rumble partner, and the other one's Rumble. We'll get to that one in a second. Some coffee is weak, people. Some coffee is sad. Some coffee is so bad it probably votes Democrat. But 1775 coffee is bold, strong. It's America first in every single cup. The dark roast hits harder than a Trump comeback. The medium roast, smooth, no bitterness, just like before Bidenomics. And the Vitality Mushroom Blend fuels your brain like a Trump at a debate. This is the coffee that Patriots drink, that Rumble drinks, and that I drink. I don't have it here, but I do drink it every single morning in my beautiful mug now also. Small batches roasted fresh in Miami every week because your coffee should be fresher than a White House press briefing trying to explain the economy. Whole bean, ground pods, they've got it all. Go to 1775 Coffee. Use promo code VIVA for 15% off and start buying and start every morning with coffee that actually stands for something. By the way, every dollar spent until I think it's April 20th gets you entered in the raffle to win that beautiful Tesla Cybertruck that I was driving around last week. 1775coffee.com, promo code Viva gets you 15% off. It's delicious coffee. The other one is Rumble Premium. I mean, this is something I got to remind everybody of in any event, every show, but Rumble has, doesn't have some problems. It's been under attack from people who oppose free speech. Advertisers like the shitty Dunkin' Donuts pulling their ads because it's too conservative. So this is the way that you can support Rumble. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular, and now we're taking the fight to the next level. When major advertisers conspire to pull their dollars, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts, the crappiest coffee on earth, turned their backs, claiming Rumble had a right-wing culture. We're not here to fit a mold. We're here to defend free speech. To strengthen this mission, we're excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. You'll find exclusive content from creators like Russell Brand, Dr. Disrespect, Tim Cass, The Mug Club with Crowder. It's more than a subscription. It's a stand against censorship and for free speech. Your voice matters. Join Rumble Premium. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using promo code VIVA10. Visit rumble.com/premium/VIVA10. Claim your discount today. Together we can turn the tide, whether you join Rumble Premium or simply continue to watch the content on Rumble. It helps keep free speech alive. Check it out. And by the way, snip, clip, and share away. And share this because this is going to be one hell of an interesting discussion. Jana Lunden. I will let her introduce herself, but I've gotten better, people, at putting it's a Grok AI summary because it does it much better than I can do it. But who's calling? Give me 1 second, please. Hello? Yeah, you can let him. Thank you. I'm going to go back and turn my phone on silent. All right. I'm bringing in Jana right now. 3, 2, 1. Jana, how goes the battle?
The battle goes well. We'll keep on keeping on. And it's been quite a battle here in Ireland over the last 5 years since I joined the battlefield for my family.
Well, we're not going to delve too far into childhood and what made you the person that you are today. I am curious. You're born in America. How did you end up in Ireland?
Yeah, it was 22 years ago. I was working in a large multinational as a senior manager, and I was offered a job to come to Dublin for a 6-month expat contract. The expat contract continued to get extended to the point where I had to decide whether to resign as an American employee and become local to Ireland, which I did. And I've been here for 22 years and never left. It's a great place to live, but we're seeing some pretty horrific changes in the landscape here.
Well, I mean, I have a bit of a gripe because the changes I noticed were free speech oriented, not grooming children oriented, but we're going to get into that as well. If I may, not to get into too much, but born in America, you lived here for how many years before you ended up moving over to Ireland?
I was in America for over 20 years, born and raised. I also lived in Canada for a work assignment and then moved here 22 years ago. But I'm born and raised in the most beautiful state of Maine.
That would never have been the most beautiful. I would never. I know we have a member of our locals community who's in Maine. I would have said most beautiful state would have been Utah from a purely geographic perspective. But and may I? So what did you do for the 20 years that you were in America before moving over to Ireland?
Yeah, it was over 20 years. I won't say how many, I'll give away my age, but I was in America for well over 20 years. I worked in a multinational. At the time, it was MBNA, which was a wonderful company. Moved over here with MBNA. It had a real sort of entrepreneurial feel when you were a manager there. You got to really make decisions and be empowered and trusted. It merged with Bank of America. Things changed quickly when that happened. And I was fortunate enough at that point to get a redundancy and jump ship. Then I was headhunted into another company, eBay, PayPal, where I worked. And then I've been a stay-at-home mom, a life coach, an event planner, and a campaigner for the last 12 years.
MBNA is the Maryland Bank NA?
It was back in the day, yes, many years ago. But that's closed.
Okay, very cool. And so what year did you go to Ireland? What year did you formally break and start living in Ireland full time?
Yeah, I moved over in 2003 full time for the 6-month contract, and I worked for many years over here working until I got had children and got redundancy just about 12 years ago. I got redundancy, and then I got married and had children. So I've been a stay-at-home mom since then, since having babies. But I worked many years in Ireland as well. It was about 8 or 9 years in the multinational industry.
It's terrible where you say 2003, and in my memory, that's fresh in my, I was, that's like just yesterday, and that's 22 years ago. We're not old, we're just experienced and have, the time continues to pass. So you've been there for over 2 decades. You had kids and then you stopped working. And I guess we're going to have to get into how you got into what you're doing right now before we even get into all the controversy. NWC, tell us what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I founded the Natural Women's Council, which is a grassroots group dedicated to the health, well-being, freedom, and rights of women, children, and families. We don't exclude men, even though we're the Natural Women's Council. And we've been campaigning over the last few years. It started where we formed in 2022. Actually, no, was it 2022? Yes, it was. 7/7/2022, when the government tried to erase the word woman from our Maternity Protection Act, because of course they wanted to be inclusive to the trans men who breastfeed or some nonsense like that. Luckily, that was reversed, but we continued our battle, and we started finding, the women in our group, finding inappropriate content in the libraries as well as the school books. And we really just started a full team of researching where it's coming from, what's happening, who's been involved, and then exposing it to parents across Ireland. When the changes to the age 12 to 15 curriculum came out back in 2023, we fundraised, designed, and printed over 250,000 leaflets where we hit the street to get these out in the hands of parents who may not know what's happening because they're not on social media. Fast forward as well to 2024, the Irish government tried to erase the word woman, mother, and home from our constitution, and it went to a referendum. Luckily, through our campaigning, we had over 100,000 leaflets on that. The public voted 75% no to both referendums to erase the mother, woman, and home from the Constitution. So the government really got a strong no. And you would have think they would have learned a lesson, but like anyone who's placed the public in an abusive relationship, and like any narcissist would behave, instead of backing down, the government is doubling down and continuing to push this sinister agenda. And now it's going into our youngest children down to age 5 in primary school here in Ireland, being indoctrinated with gender ideology and a very Marxist agenda filled with social justice in schools. So the children will be indoctrinated, but sadly dumbed down, where they won't have a chance to succeed in their life without those critical thinking skills.
If I may ask, how old are your kids?
My little ones are in primary school. They're age 6 and 9. So they are quickly learning from what I've been seeing in the world, quickly being taught right from wrong and fact from fiction, because with the whole gender ideology and all of the social justice, it really boils down to truth versus lie. So what they are telling the public and feeding the children is a lie. So it's not only wrong versus right, good versus evil, but it's truth versus lie. And it is a lie that anyone can change sex. It's a lie that a man can become a woman. And that's what's being imposed in the schools without the parental consent.
I guess the only reason I'm asking the age of your children is, when did you discover this to embark on the, I'm not going to call it a crusade, that might not be the right word, this righteous battle, which some people might think is another word for a crusade. When did you discover this? Because you have your kids. When I looked at Ireland, Scotland, UK, I look at it more from the free speech perspective, where I've been noticing since, at the very least, the Tommy Robinson era, that free speech has been under attack. At the same time, what we would call an all-out invasion is occurring. So I had not been looking at the indoctrination of children, the grooming of children. When did that come on your radar?
That was about January 2023. We first sort of saw the library books, and then from the library books, we started digging into the school curriculum and where it's coming from, looking at all of the documents from the global superpowers like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the WHO, and the WEF. And we soon found out that this is not grassroots. This is not a group in Ireland or any other country that is standing up for their rights and being inclusive. This is a heavily funded super billion-dollar industry coming from the top down. And it isn't just Ireland, it's happening in the US and Canada. And we partnered up with a strong team of people from the UK, Public Child Protection Wales, a team in Australia, US, Canada, and we're joining forces on an international level because it is not just in Ireland and it surely is not grassroots. So that's when I realized the indoctrination and sexualization was happening in January 2023. But we also started campaigning in 2020 against the COVID measures being pushed on kids in Ireland. We had the longest lockdowns in Europe, probably the world. 95% were coerced into getting the COVID shot. Kids were asked to wear masks all day in school, including during their physical education, keep their distance and be fearful they're going to spread a virus and kill their grannies. So the children's mental health in Ireland is on the floor. They are anxious. They are living in fear. There's a high cases of depression because of what our government has done to these innocent children. So we started campaigning in 2020 when we realized the government isn't looking out for people. And then fast forward a couple of years later, they're trying to push a very woke transgender ideology onto children and sexualize children. I won't talk about the details of those books, but what we saw in the libraries, it was like porn in the kids' libraries.
No, you could talk about it. I told you before the show, I'm not going to bring up the graphics just because it is softcore pornography that's being exposed to children. But before we even get there, two questions. I am curious because it is amazing that it is everywhere. It's everywhere, at least in the West. It's certainly not in the Far East, and it's not in Eastern Europe as much. And so who is, and I have my joke that I always want to make, but I won't. Who is the they? Like, what are these organizations that are pushing this, and who's funding it?
Very good question. So it's being pushed in schools by the likes of UNESCO and the United Nations with feedback from the WHO. If anyone wants to look up the document, it's called the WHO Standards of Sexuality. It's a long document with an age matrix. And I'll give a couple examples. The WHO, the World Health Organization, thinks that we should be teaching our children in schools from age 4 about touching themselves for pleasure. Teach an age 4-year-old child about masturbation. The WHO thinks we should start teaching age 9 about their first sexual experience at age 9. And it goes on and on through the age matrix. So it's being pushed by United Nations and the WHO, who help, push their education curriculums into schools. But it's being funded by the likes of billionaire philanthropy, like we have Bill Gates, we have George Soros, Open Society, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers. I mean, this is a super billion-dollar industry. And you may ask, why would they want to attack the children? Why would they want to push this in schools and teach children they can change their sex? Well, there's a lot of money involved, but there's also the breakdown of the family. So they believe that if they can confuse a child with their sex, a child only knows a couple of things about themselves. They know their name. They know if they're a boy or girl, if they have a mommy, a daddy, or a brother, sister. If you take that very strong fact away from a child, whether they're a boy or a girl, they will start to question reality about anything, and it will break down the family and their reality. The second thing is, for every child who gets pushed down this transgenderism path, it's worth about $1 million in the pharmaceutical and medical industry, because there's puberty blockers, there's cross-sex hormones, there's surgeries, and then they become a lifelong pharma patient and their lifespan reduces, so they probably won't get paid a pension either. So there's a very sinister agenda in this attack on children. It's about money, but it's also about control, these Marxist ideologies, making children feel always that they're oppressed, they're the victim, and they must be an ally for other victims, all those other trans kids in schools. So they're indoctrinating the whole class under the guise of kindness.
Let me bring this up because it's actually, it's so not funny, but so outrageous. When should this is from the WHO's website. When should sexual education begin? Children and adolescents have the right to be educated about themselves and the world around them in an age and developmentally appropriate manner, and they need to learn this for their health and well-being. Intended to support school-based curricula, the UN's global guidance indicates that CSE is child sexual education, I imagine, to see what that is, at the age of 5, when formal education begins. However, sexuality education is a lifelong process, sometimes beginning earlier at home with trusted caregivers. Only the parents who have this. Okay, sorry. Learning is incremental. What is taught at the earliest ages is very different from what is taught during puberty and adolescence. Let me back this up a little bit. Okay, so WHO, UNESCO, that's the United Nations stuff. Okay, there's too many things to keep track of here. Europe was leading the charge for trans surgery. I forget what's the name of that institution that was recently basically dismantled.
Yeah, the Tavistock was shut down due to whistleblowers who came forward. Yep.
Okay, so Tavistock was the leading forefront of promoting trans, not just ideology, but medical interventions. I interviewed Tulip R. Richie Torres. I don't know if he's a British guy who had the bottom surgery and instantaneously.
I met Richie at a conference. Yeah.
Okay, he's been off Twitter for 6 months, and I haven't heard from him. I was trying to find a way to reach out and see if everything's good. But I had Richie on. And he was explaining like he had 2 consults. He suffered from OCD, generalized anxiety disorder, a mental condition which was arguably exploited or at least ignored, and they promoted this and mutilated his body for the rest of his life. Tavistock has been shut down. There's been some lawsuits now filed. I believe Richie is suing as well. Chloe Cole is suing in the US, but there's been a shift away from the medical intervention and almost an acknowledgement of liability in the UK, correct?
In the UK, but not Ireland. Ireland, despite our best efforts, is not banning puberty blockers and is not banning gender ideology in schools the way that the UK did. They're completely ignoring the CAST report, which was commissioned by the NHS with some experienced pediatricians and an expert team of doctors, even a Dr. Moran here in Ireland. So Irish state is dismissing the science and they're pushing this ideology. Ireland is really in the petri dish of this globalism and this pushing of this agenda on the children. They want to report into the globalists, be the best boy in class for the World Economic Forum. WEF, you're probably aware of the Sustainable Development Goals. One of them is gender. But if you look at the United Nations definition of gender, it's gender identity, gender expression. It doesn't protect gender equality or gender equity, a biological female. Ireland is still allowing men to compete against women in sports, allow men in our toilets, changing rooms, and prisons.
What is the CAST report? I'm trying to find something to quickly summarize it for those not familiar with it.
Yeah, so the CAST report, if you can, anyone can pop in their Google CAST report, and it pops up. I think it's the top on the Google there, and there's a document over 300 pages long, and it was the NHS commissioned this group of doctors to look at the gender affirming care in the UK, and they looked at this, and it took a couple of years of research to put this report together, but it's the gold standard. There's not going to be another one after the CAST report. So although the hard left and the trans right activists are trying to discredit and dismiss the CAST report, it is the gold standard put together by the best doctors in this field.
But the ultimate conclusion of the CAST report is that chemical castration, puberty blockers, is more damage than good.
Yeah, it does state in there, which I don't fully agree with all aspects of it. It does state that puberty blockers, something along the lines, can still be prescribed in a clinical, certain specific setting or that. Whereas our groups personally feel that it's absolutely no. Children are too young to consent to puberty blockers. That's something they should not have in any situation at all. So there is some little bit of room in the CAST report for the use of puberty blockers, whereas our groups take a hard stance and say, no, children should not be chemically sterilized through these puberty blockers.
And I don't know, I'm not knowing this. In the CAST report, was it saying that puberty blockers might have a medical purpose for the purposes of precocious period or for the purposes of treating gender dysphoria?
I'll have to double check the specific verbiage on that, but it was very special situations.
I never even knew when people say, well, puberty blockers are prescribed for medical conditions. And then I looked up, I was like, yeah, for precocious periods, for an 8-year-old girl that's getting a period too early and they want to delay it slightly so that the girl, I don't imagine there's physiological reasons to grow before you can have a period. So and not knowing if that was the reason, I'm curious because puberty blockers, when they said, talking about, lies versus truth, it just puts a pause on puberty. If I had these videos, I would have brought them up. Just pauses puberty. Pausing something for which there's a limited window is not a pause. It's actually irreparable harm, which they're now acknowledging. Did the CAST report acknowledge that these puberty blockers cause micropenis, the inability to achieve orgasm later on in life? Did they acknowledge all of these medical assaults that these cause?
Yeah, they did. They did touch on some of the damage. I'm going to look at that again. I don't want to misquote the report, but they did kind of talk about the dangers of those. But they also, in addition to the medical transition of children, one thing they did point out is that pronouns as well is not a neutral territory. So in Ireland, the sex education or the SPHE wellbeing teachers, there's a document that the NCCA, who are the group that design our curriculums in Ireland, funded by the part of the Department of Education, they asked the teacher to create a safe and inclusive classroom and introduce themselves using their pronouns, try to avoid gender neutral language, try to avoid family language like mother and father, because, you know, some kids have two daddies. And so that's being told the teachers in Ireland. We also have a case in Ireland where a teacher, Enoch Burke, spent over a year in prison. It started because he refused, due to his Christian faith and also the science, to call a student by their preferred pronouns. A student wanted to be a they, them, and Enoch Burke refused this. And he did get suspended from school. He did break the court order by showing up at school to do his job. He was still on payroll, and he had an altercation with the principal about this situation, but he was put into jail for well over a year. He has significant fees, and they're talking about how they're going to get those fees from him. So although he's out of prison, he's not a free man because he didn't buy into this transgenderism. So pronouns are being used in Irish schools as well. And Belong To, a trans activist group, is going into schools to spend a week, full access to children for a week against our wishes. And in their toolkit, they talk about how important it is to use pronouns, not to misgender anybody, and not to dead name anyone, or that child could be reprimanded. My child could be reprimanded.
How could they be dead naming a child that has not even been on this earth long enough to have had two names? Okay, sorry, hold on. We're going to back it up a little bit. Why is Ireland so much different than, again, an ignorant question. I sort of lump Ireland, Scotland, and the UK into one geopolitical basket. Why would Ireland be so distinct and still off the rails compared to England?
That's a really good question. It comes down to the government here, the Irish state, whether they are completely compromised or captured or ideologues, that's to be determined. It could be a mix of everything. But Ireland back in after the crash, when the big banks came into town and there was the crash, the Irish people, we had to repay. We absorbed in Ireland about 42% during the crash of the overall European debt. So we have paid our dues in Ireland, but we had to suffer, and our great-great-grandkids will still be paying back this debt. So it all started after the crash. We sort of lost the government tried to take away our sovereignty. So after the crash, then there was a decade of, I call it the decade of destruction. So there was the banking crash. 10 years later, we had the COVID with the toughest lockdowns, business closures, vax passes. I was put into a system of medical apartheid because I didn't get my shots. I had to eat outside for over a year on a cold bench. I couldn't go to theater with my children or to the cinema or the gym. So Ireland, the government just kept pushing whatever the global agenda was onto the people of Ireland without any consultation. So this decade of destruction, we saw the banking crash, we saw the COVID, we saw mass immigration is an absolute crisis here. There's stabbings every second day, and including school children being stabbed in the middle of the day. But the media won't talk about that because they want to say there's no link between open borders and crime, which is a complete and utter lie. So I've campaigned against the open borders as well. And the migrant tent villages they're setting up in towns and villages, packing illegal single men in every hotel and bed and breakfast in every town and village. And people like myself have peacefully protested. And the Garda, there was Garda brutality. They were captured on video, pepper spraying people, elderly people, children, beating people with batons who stood up in their villages and towns to say, we don't want these unwelcome migrants to move in. 85% land with no passport or ID. We don't know who they are. So the government is just answering to these global parties without any consultation with the people. The people are disenfranchised here in Ireland.
The stats say Ireland is still 82%, they put it in quotes, white Irish, 9.5% identifying as any other white background. Other significant ethnic groups, Asian, and they put it in quotes, around 2%. I hate, I'm going to ask the question in here. I don't really care if it's politically incorrect. In the government, people are going to draw conclusions from the representation. Who's in charge? Who is in the Irish government? Like names, how long have they been there for? Are they WEF? Is this a case of like the white liberal destroying a country so they can feel virtuous about it? Or is this a question of foreign infiltration into the government, like what we're seeing sort of in England more so?
I think there is foreign infiltration, but if you look at the demographics of our government, we have, the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin. He's a white man from Cork, but he is pushing the globalist agenda. We have Simon Harris, who is the Taoiseach. He is a white man from Wicklow. We have Helen McEntee, minister. She was the Minister for Justice, opened up all the borders without any vetting or deportation process. She's now the Minister for Education. Helen McEntee, a white woman who lives down the road from me. Her husband actually is a director of the company that makes puberty blockers. So she just signed into legislation, 72 genders. 72 genders were signed into legislation to give more rights to a man in a dress than me as a biological female. And she's been relentlessly pushing through the hate speech bill to try to silence and censor us and even criminalize us for having a meme on our phone. A Garda could come to my house and say, I want all of your devices. I want all of your passwords. And if I don't give my passwords and devices over, I could be put through the criminal process. They've been trying to push this bill through for the last 2 years, but they can't even define hate. But they did put the hate crime legislation through. We have Minister Norma Foley, a white woman from Kerry. She was Minister for Education, pushing relentlessly this gender ideology and the sexualization of children into schools. We wrote her dozens of letters. We did protests outside her office. Now she's Minister for Children. And she's Minister for Integration, and she's made an announcement for two things that are a big concern. One is Irish people are not going to be allowed to know where the IPAS centers, the immigration centers, the illegal immigration centers are going because people will protest. So we'll just pop them all up, but we're not going to tell the Irish people where they are. The other thing Norma Foley did, which every parent should listen to this, I know it's affected other countries. When she was Minister for Education, she is putting psychologists in all of the schools to deal with the mental health crisis that our children are experiencing. While the psychologists are being put in all the schools, there's a bill on the table called the Prohibition of Conversion Therapy, a bill of 2018. What this bill means, it's a short bill, but it's not sweet. This bill means that if a child or an adult who's gender confused presents to a professional, that could be included your teacher, a guidance counselor, psychologist, or anything, if they do not take an affirmative approach to affirm the child is trans, they can be fined up to €10,000. They have to affirm a gender confused child.
You're familiar with the conversion therapy ban in Canada, I presume, which basically criminalizes. I mean, this is not quite as bad as what we got in Canada, which was voted in unanimously, even by the so-called Conservative Party, where you cannot even treat. Like affirmation, like Dr. Peterson says, is not treatment. It's actually sometimes antithetical to treatment. So just blind affirmation is now what is legislatively required in Canada. And it sounds like it's the same thing in Ireland.
They're pushing for it.
What the heck? What are the 72 genders? I can't, I'm Googling it as we're talking. I can't find where they even list them. Do they list the 72 genders?
One of the senators in Ireland, who actually I just wrote to this morning asking for her to raise this issue about the Garda, Sharon Keoghan, an independent senator, read the 72 genders out in the Seanad in the upper house and read them out. It took over 25 minutes to read them out.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is not funny because it's the destruction of it's the destruction of a beautiful culture, a beautiful nation, a beautiful people. But we're gonna have a good sad laugh at this. I believe this is it. Here, mother F. I don't mean to swear. I should not swear for the first time in front of a new guest. Holy shit! I'm going to do it anyhow. Besides male and female, there are 72 genders. I believe this is what is recognized in Ireland. We're not taking 15 minutes to do this, but I'm going to do a few of these. Sorry, I can't even get to the top. Agender, abimigender, Adam's gender, a gender that is identifiable or indomitable. People identifying as gender refuse to be categorized in any particular. Aerogender, esthegender, aphegender, agender flux, alexgender, alusia gender, amoregender, ambigender. We're just going to pick one here. Gender witched. The person is inclined toward the notion of having one gender but does not know which. Let's go down here. Did we get to all of them? Heel gender, a gender identity that gives the person peace, calm, and positive. Okay. I'm not saying this to make fun. It's mental illness, and there's nothing wrong with having a mental illness. There is something wrong with catering and codifying and criminalizing the treatment of one's mental illness. We all are on some form of a spectrum. Some of us on one end or the other. Holy hell.
Yeah, it makes my headache. It really makes my headache to not only look at that long list of makey-uppy genders. And what I say to people is, you know, if a man in a dress says he's a woman and he wants to believe that, that's his choice. But whether I want to believe it as a woman, that's my choice. And my children, that's their choice. And in schools, in every single school book, and this isn't just the social personal health education, the SPHE, this is flooding into English books and math books, because guess what? The Irish state has decided to take a whole school approach. So rather than just push this gender nonsense and social justice like BLM and more, and the climate crisis, instead of pushing it just into one subject, it's in all the subjects. It's a whole school approach. You can't avoid it. And part of the reason they did that is because we campaigned to get children opted out of these particular aspects of the curriculum. But guess what? We can't opt them out now because it's everywhere. So it's subversion of parental rights. Our rights as parents are violated under the Article 42 of our Constitution and under the Education Act of 1998, where we are meant to be consulted about this. They've done consultations, closed door consultations, whereby only a select group of parents knew that it was happening. Of course, those pro-trans parents, but none of us got to do a consultation to tell the government that we don't want this in school. And some of the books are horrendous. I mean, one book for age 12 has 8 pages on masturbation, written by a teacher, Owen Cleary, who teaches in Greystones, County Wicklow. I went to his event. There were 600 people there. Our health minister, Stephen Donnelly, was on the stage as well. And I brought a bag of books, and they were talking about online safety. So I brought a bag of books, and I got the microphone in front of 600 people and said, if you're talking about online safety, let's talk about safety of what kids are learning. In one of the books in the library, it teaches children here they can order puberty blockers and hormones online, and there's pictures of how the child can inject the drug into their body. There's another book in the children's section.
If you want to bring up any of these visually to share, I mean, please feel free. Because it's like, let me just bring this one up because I think I just found my new favorite gender. Hold on, let me see if I can. Mirror gender, changing one's gender type based on the people surrounding. I mean, it's almost like a test of politeness in terms of what people can get away with other civil, peace-loving, tolerant people. Okay, you believe your gender changes based on whether you're surrounded by men or women. Okay, good. You want to talk to my kids about masturbation? I'm not. That's the threshold. All right, you think you're a woman? That's fine. Everybody had someone in the family who, whether we knew it or not growing up, we grew up to do. Oh, they were dressed in drag or they were trans and whatever. There was never a question of whether or not that male would ever be able to go into a women's sporting event. Period. And almost as a matter of respect from the individual who, whether or not they believe they suffer from dysphoria, maybe it didn't cause them discomfort. They believe they should have been born a woman. Good for them. I don't even think they had the audacity of saying, well, now let me compete against a woman. The people doing it today, it is a test of patience. It's a test of tolerance. And it's an exercise of abuse and domination because it's narcissists and not people who genuinely feel discomfort for whatever they have, because they want you to recognize something that's untrue as opposed to them being not tolerated, but just allowed to live their life. So I'm sorry. Rant over. Mirror gender.
I've just uploaded a document. It's not letting me add from the stage. It's in the studio. It's a junior infant document. Can you see that? Yes, perfect. So
now I think you might have the power to zoom in on it. I'll see if I can zoom in on my screen.
There we go. Okay, so can you see that?
I see the document, but I don't see it zooming in on any particular section.
Not sure how to get it bigger there. Let me just see if I can
Go
zoom.
to the
It's n- I
native
don't-
document that you're looking at. Don't go through StreamYard. Go to the native document and then enhance or zoom, and you'll be able to increase not the font, but you'll be able to zoom in on a section. I presume
Okay, can I
it's a
do that?
PDF It's
I
a
have a
PDF.
PDF on this. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Oh,
PDF
no, you
that
won't.
I have there. So,
No, so
yeah,
go minimize your screen, go into the PDF, and then you can zoom. You can expand it as you would a document. But if you're not, I think people have to take their glasses off to. Let me see
okay,
what I
I'll
can
try to
do.
do that. Yeah, it is a small one. It's the glossary of terms. It's in the blue box. I don't know if anyone can see that, but I will try to zoom in. I'm not
Glossary
as
of terms.
techy.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. I'm
Yes.
picturing that Nigerian guy. Why are you gay? You are transgender. Transgender for trans for short. Okay. Heterosexual or straight. Homophobic bullying. Transphobic bullying. LGBT and homosexual.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this document. This is just one, and it's not even the most horrific we've seen. But I would give advice to any parent listening in any country that you should have access to see all of the school books your children have access to, the toolkits and everything. So I requested this from my children's school. I'd like to know what my age 6 and 9 are learning under SPHE. Give me all the documents and all the toolkits. The toolkit was sent to me, and in the toolkit, I dug through all the links. I went through all of them. This came up. This is for age 5. This is for age 5 junior infants. Teaching age 5 about transgenderism, homophobic bullying, transphobic bullying. My child at age 5 shouldn't even know what trans is. It shouldn't even come into the school, and they shouldn't be taught gender ideology. So this was part of my children's toolkit. I got a hold of my school, and luckily the principal of the school has taken the approach that if anything comes up regarding this trans, the advice to the teacher is just have the child talk to their parents. So my school is not bringing this in the classroom. They probably know I'd be at the door.
No, I love it. That's not advice. That's the rule. Like if people can clip and take things out of context as much as they want. I go fishing with a lot of the neighborhood kids here. Like I'm potentially the only dad that does it. And we go fishing. There are things don't touch politics. If someone makes a Kamala Harris joke, no comment, or we don't talk politics. Talk to your parents about that. When it comes to sex, sexuality, it not only is it not appropriate, it should be criminal for any. Oh, but there's a teacher. I had on a teacher from Ontario who's like, well, they come to us and they ask us questions. First of all, at 13 to 15, all right, maybe, and they'll make dirty sex jokes in school. That's what kids do. The answer is, sorry, talk to your parents about that. Oh, but they can't because I'm trans. My parents are going to do it. Well, if you think there's bona fide abuse, you call the cops. Otherwise, you let parents do the parenting and teachers do the teaching. And that doesn't involve teaching on matters of sexuality that are the video. The other things were, the graphics of masturbating that I saw in the interview you did with the Irish teacher who now quit. I forget her name now.
She quit her role as SPHE. She stepped down. She's still a wonderful teacher teaching other subjects. Mary Creedon was a whistleblower that came forward to us, and we did the whistleblower interview, and she talked about what she learned on a college course at DCU, and it was teaching teachers, how to make different sex body parts out of Play-Doh or clay, teaching them about things like fisting and rimming. And some of the teachers on the course had to go Google and say, like, what's rimming? What's fisting? And they were horrified and felt violated. This was taught. Now, the course was a year long. She kept all of the documentation. She had recordings. She had screens, everything captured, knowing that it was going to have to be escalated. After she did the whistleblower interview, both the Dublin DCU, the university, and the Minister for Education took to the media, took to write a letter to all the schools to basically try to gaslight parents to say, oh, that was all just things being taught to teachers. We had no intention of it going into the classroom at all.
It's a matter of utter dishonesty. We've seen the books that are in there. We've seen it. We know it, and they're proud about it. Well, of course, they need to know about safe sex. Knowing about safe sex, maybe when you're 15, and then maybe it's limited to condoms prevent STDs and pregnancy, and that's where it ends. Fisting. First of all, I ashamed to admit it. The first time I ever heard of fisting was on a Howard Stern episode, where they had this guy and then they referenced his Twitter handle. This was pre-COVID, and I was like, oh my goodness, that they don't talk about the medical risks, or I mean, it's obviously wrong. And then the question is, why in the name of sweet holy hell are people tolerating it and allowing what I believe to be pervert, pedophile, grooming sons of bitches to teach it to kids? They get sexual pleasure from doing it. There's no question. Otherwise, they wouldn't. They would just leave it to the parents. How is it happening? I'm sorry.
They're getting permission to do it. So a teacher like Mary would speak up and say, I'm not teaching this to children, but you'd have a really woke teacher pushing queer theory, pushing Marxism, and talking about things like Gail Rubin, outer limits, which includes bestiality. We had a person in our group today stating that they're teaching bestiality, that's sex with animals, at a school in Australia. So this is being flagged there in Australia. And the queer theory, what queer theory is it has nothing to do with someone's sexual preference of being gay. Queer theory is when it's breaking down all the norms. Even gay is considered norm. Queer theory is the outer limits. It's the S&M. It's the bestiality. It's fisting. It's the putting that into a children's mind. And there was another book we saw in a library, which is a serious safety issue. It was teaching children how to use the Grindr sex app. It was a book by Juno Dawson, teaching a young child age 12 how to use Grindr, upload their photo. It will mark their location to help that child meet the nearest homosexual adult in their area. And we flagged those books to Children's Ombudsman in Ireland. It got dismissed. We went to 5 different police stations and opened up a criminal case because it violated our Children First Act of 2015. 5 pulse numbers were obtained, but they closed them off and dismissed them. We flagged it to all the libraries, the county councils, the Minister for Children, the Minister for Education. We flagged it to every authority. And these books had a little green sticker called Healthy Ireland, which is sponsored by Ireland's Health Service Executives, so our HSE. So these books teaching children to give themselves drugs, pictures of how to do that, meet adults online, fisting, sponsored by Ireland's Health Service Executive. And they all dismissed it. And the media went to town on us, calling us far-right terrorist thugs full of hate. That's how they reacted.
Do you have any? Do you have anything that would prove that to people who might be skeptical? Do you have the copy of that book or a link to it or something?
Yeah, I will send you all of the links to the books to pop into the description field after.
Because I mean, it's no, don't worry about it. And no, I also said I wasn't bringing this stuff up because people don't need to see it, but I think people need to believe it. Like, oh my goodness, yeah, they need to know what rimming is, because like when I learned that, it was Chris Rock having your salad. Chris Rock. It was from Dirty Comedy that you would watch, without your parents knowing, and not have your teachers be giving you the. But it's porn. It's porn. I don't. Okay, so I'm getting angry because it's not going to be of any good. What is the worst stuff you've seen being taught to kids in Irish schools?
I think the worst stuff, there's 2 things. There's the sexual part. So that the school books are really teaching about it's sex for pleasure, 8 pages detailed about masturbation. Why would you need to really sexualize an age 12 child, teaching them in detail about all the masturbation. So, and teaching sex for pleasure, doesn't talk about marriage, doesn't talk about families, doesn't talk about sex being something you do when you want to be married and procreate. That's been excluded. It's a highly sexual. But the other thing that's probably one of the most damaging is the indoctrination to make a vulnerable child feel that they may be born in the wrong body. No child is born in the wrong body. Nature doesn't make any mistakes. And we even had the genderbread person. Anyone, a good point of reference, anyone can go to the naturalwomenscouncil.ie and then go to our website, go to our YouTube channel. We have a playlist called The Story Time for the Irish Mommy. It's for busy parents because they're only 2 minutes each. We have mommies and grandmas around Ireland reading from some school and library books. And the psychological attack on children is unbelievable. It looks like a parody. We've had people say, is this real? Absolutely. They're reading from the books. They had them in their hands that day. But teaching a child they're born wrong, how damaging is that? Considering up to 90% maybe on the autistic spectrum. So they're praying these predators, these deviants, these groomers are preying on our most vulnerable children who already feel different because they may be on the autistic spectrum. So it's really, really harmful to the young child's developing mind. It can actually damage their minds for life.
What's amazing, it's a meme, but it's a meme because it makes sense. Is if having a penis doesn't make you a man, how does removing it change that? I mean, if you're hold on, let me bring this one up. I'm trying to find something where that's going to show people this is actually going on. Outrage over WHO advice on sexuality for infants. Guide argues that sexuality education starts from birth. WHO is under pressure to withdraw guidance for schools recommending that toddlers, quote, ask questions about sexuality and explore gender identities.
That's the document I referenced. WHO Standards of Sexuality. Anyone can bring it up. It's about maybe 60 pages long.
It really feels like when they went hard against the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, and there isn't some secret cabal of pedophiles that are controlling the world. I'm sorry, that literally is a cabal of pedophiles who are trying to normalize sexualizing children. Going right back to the video at the beginning of this, beginning of the show that I started with, the CBC, putting kids in situations that are sexuality based, that makes them feel awkward and uncomfortable, only to pressure them to overcome that. That is the definition of child grooming. That's by definition what it is, and it's coming from the state level.
Yeah. And they vilify parents like myself who have been an influence in Ireland. I have a pretty high profile where I've done a lot of public events out on the street. And we have our big event coming up on the 5th of April, coming up there called Safeguarding Children's Education. And I've done a lot of podcasts. I've hit the streets with leaflets. And because of my profile and because of the success with our campaigns, the state, the media have gone after me. They've tried to destroy me, vilify me, slander me. I'm sometimes the mom who's othered at my school gate. But at the end of the day, the advice I would have for any other mother is protecting your child is your duty, and protecting your child is more important than winning a popularity contest at the school gate.
Let's get into that, because it's an amazing thing where it is Marxism, communism, whatever you want to call it, where the laws on the books are intended to basically excuse the villains and excuse the bona fide criminals because they don't know better, and go after those who should know better, that being law-abiding citizens. Okay, so hold on. With X, with the document on X, which I'll pull up in a second, explain the context of how the Irish government got some sort of court order to go after your I guess tweets and DMs on Twitter, in what context that was, and I'll bring up the document in a sec.
Yeah, so it was Valentine's Day, and I was watching my kids swim at their swimming lesson, and I brought my laptop to work on some campaigns, and I opened the laptop and I saw an email from twitterlegal@x.com, and it was just a PDF. There was actually no other verbiage attached. So I opened it up and it looked like, a court order, and it was about 4 pages long. And the court order stated that it was signed by Agarda, went to the judge. The judge approved the court order, which was sent to Twitter, stating that they believe I'm involved in a criminal activity under Section 63(3) of the Criminal Act, which is drug trafficking. So they believe that me, a school-run mom who doesn't even take aspirin, is involved in drug trafficking, and therefore they need to be looking at all of my personal accounts, my private messages, and all of that. So when I looked at it, I said, right, put your common sense hat on. Is this real? I looked at it and said, I don't think it's real because all the names are redacted. So it looks like somebody just took their own order or one they borrowed and just blacked things out and stuck my name in.
It also looks like it was typed up on a 1980s typewriter, and scanned in a PDF. Like we're in 2025, and not to critique the Irish justice system, it looks a little antiquated, but no, it's bona fide, legit. I'm showing it right here, where it says, whereas on
fake for a few days. I actually had my solicitor look at it, and my friend, a couple of friends who run IT communities, and they said it's definitely fake. In fact, someone actually forgot to change drug trafficking to a tweet that offended somebody, or incitement to hate, or whatever else they were going to put. They left it in as drug trafficking. So of course it's fake. Fast forward a few days and I see a tweet from @Global Affairs, and I got a call from someone else who got one of these, and I said, no, yours is fake, mine is fake. But we saw the tweet from @Global Affairs that actually was a statement from Twitter that this happened, and they refused the government's request to go into my personal data and put me under surveillance because it was a government overreach, said Elon Musk. And thank God that Twitter didn't release that, but I have it on quite a good source that Meta, which is Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and YouTube, that they also may have gotten this request. And I haven't heard anything from Meta. So the question is, did Meta comply? And is the Irish state watching all of my WhatsApp messages and my personal activity?
I take for granted they are in any event.
Absolutely.
Now, from what I understood about the act, Criminal Justice Act 63(1), Ireland. From what I understood, it wasn't specifically for potential drug trafficking. It was for serious criminal activity, and it was historically used for drug trafficking, terrorism offenses, and has since been expanded in terms of its breadth and scope as to who they can go after. It wouldn't make a difference one way or the other. The bottom line is it's accurate that the Irish government sought this order, which I presume was ex parte. You had no idea it was even issued until X notified you.
No idea.
And they want access to your social media, your Twitter, I should start calling it X now. I realized this morning I was listening to Woody Harrelson on Rogan, and I realized why Elon might have renamed it X. It's to break away from the Twitter history. Twitter was shite, and X is better. So I should start calling it X out of respect. That they went after your posts, which I presume you don't delete in any event, or DMs, which might show some criminality that might be conspiring to contradict a child's gender identity as expressed under whatever. You don't know what happened yet, other than it doesn't look like X complied with the order.
No, it doesn't look like it. They put out the statement on X @Global Affairs that they didn't comply, but mine was just the PDF attached. So I've responded back to X to say, thank you so much for the information. Can I get a copy of the unredacted court order? And can you confirm that you didn't comply with this? So I haven't heard. I'm waiting to hear back from X at the moment. But I have no doubt that they've asked the same of our mobile phone companies and our WhatsApp, and that they're trying to spy every chance that they possibly can get. And, you know, I wouldn't have known about this. So they are trying to get information, but the dates on mine matched up with the dates on another group that was targeted, an independent journalist group called the Irish Inquiry. And the dates were a few days in July. So the dates from the 15th to 18th, I believe it was, matched up with theirs. So something must have happened in Ireland between the 15th and 18th of July, which I didn't remember. So like any busy mom who doesn't remember what you do a few months back, I got my phone out and looked at photos from that day. I was celebrating my 50th birthday with some flowers and balloons, so that wasn't too criminal. I was climbing trees another day with my children, and another day I went for a sea swim and a sauna.
Yeah, but they're just going to look for anything. Now, let me bring this back up. It's effing wild that they've learned all of the wrong lessons of lawfare. This is 63(1), the provision of law under which they got or issued that order that X didn't comply with. A member of the Garda Síochána, I don't know how to speak.
Garda Síochána. It means guardians of the peace, where they're supposed to protect people.
May, for the purposes of an investigation into drug trafficking or an offense under Section 31. Go to Section 31, and it's got a whole slew of things here. Conceals this is money laundering. So it's communism. I mean, now they're just we'll find an unrelated crime. Maybe you didn't pay enough taxes. Maybe who knows? Maybe they're going to accuse you of having taken funds and didn't spend. That was not. Was that your first run-in with state surveillance, or at least state accusations of criminality?
First accusations of criminality, yes, but I did have a very interesting situation happen a few months back. I think it was around maybe the summertime. I'll have to check the dates, but I was out with the children, and I get home, and the children's father said, the Garda was came into the house today. I'm like, what happened? So one Garda barged in the front door. He was in the shed, and another Garda ran around the back door. And I said, well, what was it? And he said, oh, they said a house alarm was going off. Well, I don't have a house alarm. I have every door with double locks on it, and I've had dogs, but no house alarm. Oh, they must have gotten the wrong house. So I quickly rang Phone Watch, which is the company that rings into the Garda station with alarms. And I asked Phone Watch, do you have my address? on file? No. My air code? No. Was there any call out in my area on this particular day? No. So then I had my solicitor write a letter to the sergeant and ask for information on what happened. They rang me back and said, they didn't know that I called Phone Watch. They rang me back and said, Phone Watch gave us your air code. And I said, no, Phone Watch didn't. I rang them. And they said, no, they called in. And I said, well, I'm not calling you a liar, Sergeant, with all due respect. But what I'm saying is Phone Watch told me they didn't call in. So can you actually listen to that call and pull the call? Because someone was obviously impersonating Phone Watch. Can you get a number? They said the number matched Phone Watch, which was completely contradictory to what Phone Watch said. So my question is, why did the Garda raid my house and not ring the bell, just barge right in my front door for a phone alarm that never went off, for an alarm that wasn't linked to my house at all? So I think that was clear bully and intimidation tactics. And then when this happened, I'm like, I'm a threat to the establishment because I'm exposing the agenda happening with, the COVID excess deaths, the transgenderism, the attack on kids, erasing women, open borders, migrant crime, and more. So they definitely see me as a threat. There's also another thing that happened where an NGO called Hope and Courage Collective, it sounds lovely, but they used to be called the Far Right Observatory. They went into the Dáil, which is our Parliament building, November 2023. They went in there and put my face up on the screen and said that this woman is a middle-class Christian fundamentalist who is the connective tissue between middle class and far right, and she's linked to burning down immigration centers. They went in, a publicly funded NGO, and the director of that group is the director of the very woke National Women's Council of Ireland, Orla O'Connor. They went into the government buildings and slandered me and accused me of arson. I have a recording of that call, so I know it happened. Someone was wired up in there. So that's what they went in to do, to try to slander my good name as a mother protecting children in Ireland.
So COVID was the moment of revelation for you.
I didn't wake up to what's happening in the world until April 2020, and people do randomly put up tweets showing a Facebook post I put up 5 years ago where I did say we need to lock down and put your mask on. I was absolutely, completely fast asleep. I did think until I saw the data there was a deadly virus. So it's never too late to wake up. I'm guilty that I wasn't awake.
That wasn't even where I was going with that. Look, there's one thing to have been in a state of terror for the first 2 weeks because it was literally out of a movie Contagion or something. No, my point was where I noticed the government trying to destabilize society, or at least be the new God, is when during COVID, when they literally said, this is what you have to do. This is where you have to go. This is who you can and cannot talk to. This is, you rat out your neighbors. Because I was in Canada where the state-funded media was writing articles on the joys of snitching on your neighbor during a pandemic.
Yeah,
it was undermining all the basic tenets of a civil society for the purposes of total reliance on government. And what I noticed is like the drawing a wedge between family. You're not celebrating Christmas with your family this year. And then you get the isolation, you get the fear, you get the panic, and you get more easily manipulated people. When it came to the kids, I mean, that's where I started to notice exactly how it goes, where you drive the wedge between kids and parents. And if the kids are being told by the government, I need to be 6 feet from another person, and the parents are like, no, you don't. Well, what do you know? The guy, and it breaks apart families. I'm convinced that's the underlying goal here. But I'm going to go back to the question in the beginning: who's doing it? Pun intended. Why are they doing it? And how do you stop it? I mean, let me bring this one up just because it's stop complaining, kick the Muslims out of your country. The problem is this: it's not even the Muslim community doesn't tolerate this shit any more than anybody else. It was the only thing actually that unified the immigrant population of Canada with the trucker protests. Is like, yeah, we don't want to be mandated and forced to take medical interventions, and we don't want you guys indoctrinating our kids. And that's when Muslims and other Canadians came together and said, yeah, this is indoctrination that even we don't like. This is not being done in Ireland by an invasion. This is being done by well-meaning tyrants who are probably doing this with the blessing of their own soul. How the hell do you get them out of office? And is there a populist voice against this?
That's a really good question. Sadly, we just had our general election a few months ago. So this government, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, who are in a coalition at the moment, this same government has been in power 14 years, be it on their own or through a coalition. And the Irish people, unless the election was rigged, which we did see some speculation on that, where ballots were thrown in the bin, unless it was rigged, the Irish people voted for these same people in power to destroy the country, to push hate speech laws through, draconian hate speech laws, to flood our borders, to transgender children, to sexualize children, to have lockdowns for whatever the next pandemic might be. I mean, they voted for these people. So the Irish people, based on the tyranny that happened, over centuries with the British oppression and further back, it's in the Irish DNA to fight back, but not enough people are fighting back because their good empathy has been weaponized. They don't know what's happening. Ireland's in a state of chaos and people don't know whether to look left or right. The government is trying to vilify good people who speak up and have influence like myself, but they're also trying to divide. They're trying to use all these heavily funded movements, which is another form of Marxism, communism, to divide people. So there was the BLM to break up blacks versus whites. There's the, open borders to break down people who want them to flood in Ireland for all versus the Ireland is full. So it's constantly breaking down the people. So rather than join together in a groundswell grassroots movement and say no, this would all end if people realized they could just rise up and say no and not comply their way out of tyranny. But they're either fast asleep through the whole thing, their empathy's been weaponized, or they simply don't know. You will not see on mainstream media that the Garda went to court under drug trafficking or terrorism to try to spy on me. That will not be on mainstream. You will not see on mainstream news that there's over 22,000 excess deaths since the government pushed the injection in 2021. You will not see migrant crime on news because they do not want the public. They want to keep everyone in the dark. They don't want the public to know, because if they know, there may be that, inner Irish fighting DNA and they might rise up. So keep everyone in the dark. And media is a big problem. Media is the big problem.
Well, let me bring this up. The person who asked, well-meaning tyrant, I'll give you the quote. It's one of the best of all time. How do I get out of here? Oh, cripe. Of all the tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. C.S. Lewis. I've quoted this a few times. It's amazing. That's what I mean. These people like, we're just, I'm not even going to say you, we are just bigots. Like I've had conversations with people who I've known my whole life, and they're like, yeah, it's really confusing. And you have to be it's like, no, first of all, you don't have to be call me mean. You don't have to be understanding with a confused kid, especially if it's yours. You need to give them the guidance and you need to show them. Understanding and playing into the confusion of childhood doesn't help the child. Now, it's not my business to do that with someone else's kid, but don't tell me that I have to cater to it. You're not doing anybody any good. There's an adult for a reason. There's a developing brain for a reason. And now you've got these perverted adults exploiting developing brains, and sometimes issues with the developing brain. You're talking about the autism proportionality to kids who think they're gender dysphoric is undeniable. And so you get these people who they genuinely think they're doing something good for the kid by letting the kid destroy themselves and mutilate their bodies for the rest of their lives. And they think it's right, and they do it with the blessing of their own conscience. All right, so you got excess deaths. First of all, everybody should know this by now. Ed Dowd doing amazing work. It's the same thing in Canada. Amazing that you have excess deaths after the pandemic, and they want to cover it up left, right, and center. Whether or not it's because of the jab, whether or not it's because of everything else they did, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter. Gender dysphoria, you're going hard on that in Ireland. I mean, what are the other social ills that are destroying the nation of Ireland?
Yeah, so the reckless open borders is probably the number one issue that most people have. I mean, they see the gender stuff going on in schools and they're teaching their kids right from wrong, but the flooding of the borders is causing a lot of social cohesion issues. I, as a woman, don't feel safe walking down the streets of Dublin anymore. I used to bring my kids in for music, culture, the theater, going out for lunch. I do not feel safe in Dublin anymore. I carry DPEAT in case I need to spray anyone who might attack me. This is what it's come to for women in Ireland. Miss Helen McEntee, who was the Minister for Justice, went out and said the streets are safe. Meanwhile, 3 school children got stabbed in broad daylight as they were in school. 3 school children just about a year and a half ago on Parnell Square. We had 3 men recently stabbed in Stoneybatter, and one of the woke left senators, Marie Sherlock, said, "Oh, they just were in the wrong place at the wrong time." One of them was at home. So is there really a right time for an Irish person to be stabbed by an unvetted migrant? I don't think there's any right time or place for that to happen. There was another incident just a few days after those 3 men were stabbed in Dublin City, in a place that's a very would have been a desirable place to go for a nice meal or to the pub, near off Grafton Street. A man was stabbed and he died. Turns out the man who died was an asylum seeker who was escaping Italy on a rape charge. So he got stabbed, rest in peace, he's somebody's son, but he never should have been in Ireland. He was done on a rape charge in Italy and claimed asylum here, coming from Italy. And the man who stabbed him, I believe, was also an asylum seeker. So the news won't report all of this because they do not want the public to see the rise in migrant crime. But the biggest threat to Ireland, I think, is the hate speech laws that they're trying to push through. The hate speech laws, J.D. Vance wrote a letter to the Irish ambassador to America back in 2023, and he had concerns about Ireland stopping free speech. He said that, how are we going to handle when we depart from that fundamental principle of democracy, which is free speech? So that was on J.D. Vance's radar back in 2023. And Elon Musk is very much pro free speech, as well as Donald Trump. So I would call upon all of the Irish Americans over there to pay attention and see what's happening to your country. We are under attack from the government, not just a psychological war, but a war where they will try to criminalize people for speaking up if we have dissenting voices. So, Ireland, if we look at, Ireland shaped America. I didn't know a lot of the history when I moved here, but few countries have shaped America's identity like Ireland. Over half of George Washington's Continental Army was Irish, and 9 born Irish men signed the Declaration of Independence. So for the Irish government who may be listening to this, the Declaration of Independence has a big anniversary next year, 250 years. And the Irish government stated that they can't wait to celebrate that. But how are they going to celebrate the signing of the Declaration of Independence on one hand, but on the other hand, sign a hate speech law that silences and censors us? Ireland is being used with the digital ID, we are being used as the EU censors. So Ireland used to be the saints and scholars, but now we're put on the stage for the EU to be the land of saints, scholars, and censors. So it's really, really difficult.
When you think about it, the Irish, there are tenfold more Irish or Irish descendants in diaspora than there are in Ireland. It's among the cultures that has heavily influenced the rest of the world. Every country has the same Paddy's Day, despite the population of Ireland is what, 7 million?
5 million and growing every single day with every flight that comes in from these countries.
It's an amazing thing. Let me see. I don't want to forget any questions that I had. The crime, it's an amazing thing. The hate speech laws, that's what I was going to bring up. It seems they ditched, at least temporarily paused. Do you know who this woman is? Irish Minister Helen McEntee speaks at a news conference.
That's Miss Helen McEntee, the one whose husband works for AbbVie, the company that make the sterilizing puberty blockers. And she's the one that put 72 genders into the legislation. She's the one that had no vetting or deportation process for the unvetted migrants coming in. She's the one who says our streets are safe, not for me and my children. And she's also the one trying to silence dissenting voices like myself. She was Minister for Justice when that order was sent to the courts dated 12th of November. McEntee would have known about asking the guards in courts to put me under surveillance. That was this woman here. This woman single-handedly, I believe, has done more damage to this country and the future of our children than nearly any other politician in office.
I love it. It's they add 72 genders, and then when people complain about it, they criminalize the speech to complain about their policy. They open the borders, and then when people complain, it could be anybody. Like you bring in, I can only take the politically correct examples that won't get me in trouble, but you bring in any demographic in disproportionate numbers, you're going to have a culture clash. and then they do this failed invasion policy while calling people who talk about the Great Replacement racist conspiracy theorists. They're doing it. They're saying it's a good thing that it's happening, and then they criminalize your critique. And this is how the world slides into benevolent tyranny. Here, look at this. Is 1 in 5 people in Ireland wasn't born. The same thing in Canada as well. It's 24%. I think it's 1 in 4. Let me see what it is.
Probably higher now.
No, it's wild. I was in Scotland and Ireland. I want to say 15 years ago. Back then, the issue in Scotland was drugs, and there were stabbings. And I don't remember. I don't know if I didn't know that they were sort of maybe demographically oriented. I did know that drugs were always a problem in Edinburgh and the related crime to that. What's happened since then, since I've become conscious about this, is it's quite clearly an all-out invasion or a planned chaos of Europe, because the more chaos there is, the more draconian laws they can implement.
Yeah.
What practical improvements have you seen at the local level in terms of schooling? Like, you're following the curriculum of your kids. Is this nonsense still there, or are they trying to wean it out?
It's getting worse. It's getting worse. They're not trying to wean it out. They have had thousands of parents push back, and they are not listening to parents, and they are firing ahead with it. But the worst thing that's happening now is they are transforming the primary school curriculum. So the junior cycle, which is age 12 to 15, that one that we talked about, that's full on in the schools already. But now they are transforming the primary school, so down to age 5. And we found some documents in books where they'll be bringing in all of the social justice. So they'll basically be teaching our children to be social justice warriors. They're going to be teaching them to feel oppressed, Marxism, you're always oppressed. So you're going to be oppressed when it comes to, they're teaching about the climate crisis already. We've had parents email us to say their child came home traumatized, saying, I'm not going to be able to have children. And the mommy and daddy, once they calm the crying child down, the child said, the earth won't be here. It's going to burn up. So they're putting this fear of the climate justice. Everything now is around the climate under the guise of green. Thank goodness the Green Party in Ireland got annihilated here, because people saw that was just pushing communism. So it's getting worse. They're also going to be bringing in they have things like all of the oppression, where there's a program called Conultus, which is the Irish word for kindness. It sounds lovely. It even comes with a nice, pretty flag. The schools will be going through Conultus training. That's an anti-bullying program, but don't be fooled. What that really means is it's bringing in the LGBTQI plus alphabet soup in the back door. So our children who are gender critical, who believe there's only 2 sexes, those children must be allies to all the ones who believe there's 72 genders, or they can change their sex. And if my child is a critical thinker and doesn't believe in that, they'll be considered a bully, and they will be reprimanded under this Conaltus kindness program. So it's kind, but it's only kind if you buy into that lie. It's not kind to critically thinking children, gender critical children. It actually bullies them. A trans activist group Belong To spends a week with children in school. We did a Freedom of Information Act request. We spent a lot of time writing those, and it came back that there was no risk assessment for letting a trans activist group in schools to spend a week. Children asked to dress in rainbow colors, but children who didn't want to dress in the rainbow color to celebrate the trans community were told, you have to wear your school uniform. Everyone else can wear the rainbows, but you're going to look different in a school uniform if you don't become an ally. That is pure indoctrination. It is bullying. And I just did a whistleblower interview. Anyone can look on our naturalwomenscouncil.ie website, go to our YouTube channel. We just released a couple of days ago a whistleblower where a young gay man came forward to blow the whistle on his experience attending the youth group at Belong To. And he described it. It's akin to a cult. It's grooming. Adults in the group were buying minors alcohol and taking them to parties and nightclubs. So that group is allowed in our schools. And that whistleblower is pretty damning. And that group shouldn't be anywhere near schools or children.
They always give it the names that the exact invert of reality as to what they in fact are, like the Democratic Republic of Congo, in which someone just sent me a link. They apparently found 70 beheaded Christians in the DRC. Janet, do you have a few minutes to take some exclusive questions over on locals?
Yeah, of course I
Locals
can.
is a separate platform. That sounded very weird. we got to community there. I want to now let me ask you this, because I want to make sure that you have the opportunity, or that you say everything you wanted to say. Did I not ask a question that would have allowed you to mention something that you absolutely wanted to mention?
I think the most important thing, if anybody can take anything away from this conversation, is never underestimate the power of one conversation. So have conversations with everyone you know. I talk to people at the, in queue at the food shop or the post office. I talk to everyone I know, and I make those big talks small conversations, because I need to get this message out. This is the hill I will die on, from protecting the children. So have those one-on-one conversations, but also don't be fearful. If I lived in fear about what's happening, whether it's surveillance or whether it's Garda raiding the house or whether my phone's tapped or whether someone overinflated my tire, which did happen as well. If I lived in fear and didn't speak, I would never get out of bed in the morning. So everybody needs to realize that protecting the children and the future and freedoms for your children is more important than anything, more important than yourself. You had a child, you brought a child into this world and you gave life. It's your job to start to parent up and protect that child, and don't let anything bring fear into your world. So keep speaking one-to-one, however you can.
Now I'm going to put all your links in, and I realize I didn't do this. I put your Twitter feed in, but so if people want to follow, people want to support, where do they go?
Yep. So naturalwomenscouncil.ie or nwcouncil.ie will get you there, the shortcut. And then from our website, we have our YouTube channel, our Twitter. I would encourage everyone to watch our YouTube playlist. We have one that's called The Corruption of Education. It's not just about Ireland. This is global. It's going to tell parents what's happening in the school and where it's coming from on a global level. We are redoing that to make them shorter. Some of them are over an hour. We're kind of condensing them to 25 minutes or less, but you go to our YouTube channel and there's an abundance of information. Most of it, the research done by our amazing researcher, Eugene, who's a retired engineer. He spends hundreds of hours reading books, papers, and putting together the content for those podcasts. So it's a great way to get the information, and everyone in Ireland or further afield can book a ticket for the conference April 5th. We're going to fill that room. It's going to be a great day. Especially for busy parents who want to learn what's going on. We're also going to videotape it with our production team, so anyone across the globe can watch that conference after it happens.
Natural Women's Council. Let me make sure that I've got the right one. I don't know if there's going to be more than one of these. Share screen. This is it right here.
That's it. Yeah. So book now for that. And then you can subscribe to the website as well. There is a very small donate button. We get zero public funding. We are not one of the 32,000 NGOs in Ireland that get $6 billion a year. We get zero, but we get donations to print leaflets, do events, do what we can with minimal funding. And then all of our channels are on the top right, our Twitter, YouTube, etc. So.
And your Twitter account, let me make sure my DMs are not open, is here.
I have my personal one, and I have the Natural Women's Council one. So I'm JK London, and then I have at Natural Women's IE for one that is more focused on what's happening with the staying in the lane. But my own one, I talk about everything.
All right, amazing. And now I'm going to read these two Rumble rants over on Rumble. We got, was Britain's exit from the EU what gave the ability to resist having this ideology forced upon them? No, I don't think England's much better off. There's a bit of a pushback, but I mean, it's all just a very close tie between first, second, and third in terms of the madness between Ireland, Scotland, and England?
England is slightly better, although they are getting a really bad publicity for their grooming gangs over there and all of that happened. Richie Sunak, although I don't agree with him on everything, he did do a bit of a 180 turn on the gender ideology and the highly sexualized school curriculum after the Cass report. So they're not going to be teaching the gender ideology in school, last I knew. But Ireland is full speed ahead. Wales is in a terrible mess as well. We're linked into the Public Child Protection Wales group, which do fantastic work. So it's slightly better in England, but not 100%.
All right, and I'll read the King of Biltong. Increase your protein intake by adding some tasty high-protein meat snacks. Biltong is packed with B12, iron, zinc, creatine, and more. Get some at biltongusa.com. Use code VIVA for 10% off. That's a wonderful South African beef jerky type thing. Okay, so we're going to do this. I will not keep you for too long because I want to be respectful of your time, but thank you. I'm going to end this on CommieTube, end it on Rumble, end it on Twitter, and we're going to have a locals Q&A just to get some questions that I might have missed. So ending on YouTube.